In a small, forgotten village nestled deep within a dense forest, there once lived an old woman named Agatha. Her solitary cottage perched on the edge of the woods, shrouded by ancient trees that whispered secrets in the wind. Villagers spoke in hushed tones about Agatha, claiming she possessed an uncanny ability to communicate with spirits from the other side. One autumn evening, when the mist curled like ghostly fingers around the trees, a young boy named Thomas dared his friends to visit Agatha's cottage. Fueled by youthful bravado, they set out as darkness draped the world in an inky cloak. The journey through the forest was fraught with unease. Branches creaked overhead, and shadows danced on the forest floor, seeming to beckon the children deeper into the unknown. At last, they reached Agatha's cottage, its wooden walls weathered and leaning like an old man weary from centuries of watching. Thomas knocked on the door, his heart hammering against his ribs. The door creaked open slowly, revealing Agatha standing in the dim light of a flickering candle. Her eyes, ancient and deep as the forest itself, bore into the souls of the children. "You seek the spirits?" Agatha whispered, her voice a chilling breeze that sent shivers down their spines. With trembling hands, Thomas produced an old Ouija board he had found in his attic. The children gathered around Agatha's table, the air thick with anticipation and fear. They placed their fingers lightly on the planchette, and Agatha began to chant in a language long forgotten by the living. First, nothing happened. The candle flame flickered wildly, casting eerie shadows that seemed to dance with unseen entities. Then, with a sudden gust of wind that rattled the windows, the planchette began to move. Letters spelled out words that froze their blood. Danger! Beware! Darkness! Suddenly, the candle extinguished, plunging the room into pitch-black silence. Thomas screamed, but his voice was drowned out by a chorus of ghostly whispers that seemed to come from all directions. Panic seized the children as they groped blindly for the door, their hearts pounding in terror. They burst out of Agatha's cottage and raced through the forest, the trees reaching out like gnarled claws to snatch them back into the night. Behind them, they heard Agatha's chilling laughter mingling with the wind, a sound that echoed in their nightmares for years to come. To this day, villagers warn their children never to venture into the forest after dark, for Agatha's cottage still stands as a haunted sentinel, its secrets guarded by the spirits that dwell within. Now, take heed and let the night embrace you, but tread cautiously, for you never know what awaits in the shadows of the unknown. As the children fled through the forest, their hearts pounding in their chests, the eerie whispers seemed to follow them. Branches snapped and rustled as if something unseen darted through the underbrush. Thomas led the way, his mind racing with fear and regret for ever tempting fate with Agatha and her forbidden knowledge. They stumbled over roots and rocks, the darkness swallowing them whole. Behind them, the faint glow of Agatha's cottage lingered like a malevolent eye in the night, its presence a constant reminder of the terror they had unleashed. As they ran, Thomas thought he heard a voice, distant yet unmistakable, calling his name from the shadows. "Thomas, come back!" The hairs on his neck stood on end, and he urged his friends to run faster. But the forest seemed to conspire against them, twisting paths and closing in like a maze determined to keep them trapped in its clutches. Suddenly, they burst into a small clearing, panting and gasping for breath. The moon broke through the clouds, casting an eerie silver light that revealed a sight that froze them in their tracks. Before them stood a crumbling stone monument, covered in ivy and moss, its weathered inscription barely legible. It was a grave, forgotten by time and hidden deep within the forest's heart. The air grew colder, and the whispers around them intensified, weaving through the trees like a ghostly lament. Thomas stepped closer to the grave, feeling an inexplicable pull. With trembling hands, he brushed away the moss to reveal a name etched into the stone. Agatha Marrowhill, Keeper of Secrets. A chill ran down his spine as realization dawned. Agatha was not just an old woman. She was a guardian of ancient mysteries, bound to the forest and its restless spirits. They had trespassed into her domain, and now the forest exacted its price. Just as fear threatened to overwhelm them, A distant howl pierced the night, sending a shiver down their spines. Wolves, they thought, or something worse. In desperation, they turned and ran deeper into the forest, hoping to outrun whatever haunted them. The trees whispered secrets they could not understand. The wind carried echoes of forgotten voices, and the shadows seemed to twist and stretch, reaching out to grab them. The children stumbled onward, driven by primal fear and the desperate hope of finding their way back to safety. Hours passed, though it felt like an eternity trapped in a nightmare. Exhausted and disoriented, they stumbled upon a familiar path leading out of the forest. Dawn was breaking on the horizon, casting a golden hue over the trees that had seemed so sinister in the darkness. They emerged, bruised and shaken, into the village where concerned faces greeted them. They babbled of Agatha, the grave, and the haunting they had unleashed. The villagers listened in solemn silence, knowing well the dangers that lurked in the ancient woods. From that day forth, Thomas and his friends never spoke of their nightmarish ordeal. But the memory of Agatha's cottage and the forest's chilling secrets haunted their dreams, a reminder that some mysteries should never be sought and some stories are best left untold. And so, dear listener, heed this cautionary tale. Beware the lure of forbidden knowledge, for in the depths of darkness lies a truth that may haunt you forevermore. Months passed since that fateful night in the forest. Thomas and his friends tried to return to normalcy, but the memory of Agatha and the eerie events lingered like a shadow over their lives. They avoided the forest at all costs, haunted by the fear that something unseen still watched them from the depths of the trees. Yet, as time wore on, curiosity gnawed at Thomas. Despite their pact to never speak of that night again, he found himself drawn back to the edge of the forest where Agatha's cottage stood, a dark sentinel amidst the trees. One moonless night, unable to resist the pull any longer, Thomas slipped out of his bed and crept into the silent village streets. His footsteps echoed softly on the cobblestones as he made his way towards the forest, the air thick with the scent of pine and a chill that spoke of ancient secrets. The journey to Agatha's cottage was fraught with trepidation. Every rustle of leaves, every whisper of wind, seemed to carry a warning. As he approached the cottage, its silhouette against the starless sky sent a shiver down his spine. Moonlight filtered through the canopy above, casting ghostly patterns on the ground. Standing before the weathered door, Thomas hesitated. Fear gripped his heart like icy fingers, but his curiosity burned brighter. With a deep breath, he pushed open the door, which groaned on rusty hinges, echoing through the stillness of the night. Inside, the air was heavy with the musty scent of old books and dried herbs. Shadows danced on the walls as Thomas's footsteps echoed in the silence. He moved cautiously, his senses alert for any sign of the supernatural. The cottage appeared much as it had on that chilling night. A table stood in the center of the room, cluttered with ancient tomes and strange artifacts. The remnants of burnt candles and dried herbs littered the surface, remnants of Agatha's arcane rituals. Thomas's eyes scanned the room, searching for answers amidst the relics of the past. His gaze fell upon a book, its pages yellowed with age and bound in cracked leather. With trembling hands, he opened it, revealing pages filled with cryptic symbols and faded ink. As he flipped through the pages, a voice spoke from the shadows, low and rasping like the wind through dead leaves. Curiosity killed the cat, young Thomas. Thomas spun around, heart pounding in his chest. There, in the corner of the room, stood a figure cloaked in darkness. The figure stepped forward into the dim light, revealing a face lined with age and eyes that glinted with a knowing gleam. It was Agatha. "You should not have returned," she murmured, her voice a haunting melody that sent chills down Thomas's spine. I had to know," Thomas stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. "What happened that night? What did we unleash?" Agatha's gaze bore into him, ancient and wise yet filled with sorrow. "You sought the spirits, and they answered. But some things are not meant to be understood by mortal minds. The forest holds secrets that have slept for eons, and disturbing them awakens forces beyond your comprehension." Thomas trembled, the weight of Agatha's words sinking in. Can "Can it be stopped?" he asked, desperation coloring his voice. Agatha shook her head slowly, her expression grave. "Once awakened, the darkness cannot be easily subdued. It is a part of this forest, as old as time itself. You must leave this place and never return, lest you become entangled in its web of shadows." With a heavy heart and a mind filled with unanswered questions, Thomas nodded. He closed the ancient book and turned to leave, the weight of Agatha's warning heavy upon him. As he stepped back into the cool night air, he felt the gaze of unseen eyes upon him, watching, waiting. The forest whispered secrets as he walked away, its mysteries still swirling in the depths of his mind. Thomas knew that some mysteries were best left buried in the darkness, lest they consume the souls of the curious and the brave. And so, as dawn broke over the horizon, Thomas disappeared into the misty morning, forever haunted by the knowledge of what lurked within the forest's ancient heart. As Thomas emerged from Agatha's cottage, the weight of her words hung heavy upon him like a shroud. The forest around him seemed to pulse with a hidden energy, its ancient trees whispering secrets that stirred the very air he breathed. He knew he had ventured too far into realms best left untouched by mortal hands. The journey back through the forest was fraught with unease. Every shadow seemed to stretch and twist, threatening to reach out and ensnare him. Branches swayed overhead, their gnarled fingers clawing at the sky. The echoes of distant howls and rustling leaves followed him like a haunting melody. Thomas's mind raced with questions. What had they truly unleashed that night? Why had Agatha warned him so vehemently to stay away? And what dark forces now lurked within the depths of the forest, hungry for more than just curious souls? As he stumbled through the underbrush, a sudden chill gripped his heart. A figure loomed ahead in the mist, its form shifting between the trees like a specter. Thomas froze, his breath caught in his throat, as the figure materialized into a shape both familiar and terrifying. It was Agatha, her eyes gleaming with an otherworldly light. She stepped forward, her presence commanding yet filled with a haunting sadness. "You cannot escape the darkness now, Thomas," she whispered, her voice carrying on the wind. "You have awakened forces that cannot be contained. They hunger for knowledge, for power, and they will not rest until they have consumed all that stands in their path." Thomas struggled to find his voice, his mind reeling with fear and confusion. What do you mean?" he managed to choke out. Agatha's gaze bore into him, ancient and wise beyond measure. "Long ago, this forest was a place of balance between the worlds," she explained, her voice a lamentation of ages past. "But curiosity and arrogance have disturbed that balance. You sought answers that mortals were never meant to possess." A distant howl echoed through the trees, sending a shiver down Thomas's spine. "What can I do?" he pleaded, desperation creeping into his voice. Agatha's expression softened, a rare glimmer of compassion in her eyes. "There may be a way to appease the spirits," she murmured, "but it will require great sacrifice and courage." She handed him a small pouch filled with herbs and whispered incantations. "Take this to the heart of the forest," she instructed. "There lies a sacred grove, where the spirits once gathered in peace. Offer this as a token of humility and remorse, and perhaps the darkness will relent." With a solemn nod, Thomas accepted the pouch and turned towards the depths of the forest. Agatha's presence faded into the mist behind him, leaving him to face the unknown alone. The forest seemed to close in around him, its secrets whispering in every leaf that rustled and every shadow that danced. Yet, fueled by determination and a flicker of hope, Thomas pressed onward, guided by a sense of purpose that outweighed his fear. Hours passed as he navigated through the labyrinth of ancient trees and winding paths. The air grew thick with anticipation, the silence broken only by the occasional hoot of an owl or the rustle of unseen creatures in the underbrush. At last, he reached a clearing bathed in moonlight, its tranquil beauty a stark contrast to the foreboding darkness that had gripped him earlier. In the center stood a circle of ancient stones, covered in moss and ivy, marking the sacred grove Agatha had spoken of. Thomas approached reverently, his heart pounding in his chest. With trembling hands, he emptied the contents of the pouch onto the ground, releasing a fragrant aroma that mingled with the cool night air. He whispered a heartfelt plea to the spirits, a prayer for forgiveness and understanding. The forest held its breath, the silence stretching taut as Thomas waited, his senses heightened to the slightest movement or sound. Gradually, a gentle breeze stirred, carrying with it a sense of acceptance and peace. The shadows seemed to soften, the tension in the air dissipating like mist beneath the morning sun. In that moment, Thomas felt a weight lift from his shoulders, a sense of closure and resolution washing over him. The forest whispered its secrets once more, but this time with a gentleness that spoke of ancient wisdom and forgiveness. As he turned to leave the sacred grove behind, Thomas knew that he had taken a step towards redemption. The darkness that had threatened to consume him had been appeased, at least for now. But he also understood that the forest would forever hold mysteries beyond mortal comprehension, reminding him of the delicate balance between curiosity and respect for the unknown. With each step back towards the village, Thomas carried with him a newfound humility and reverence for the natural world. And though the memory of Agatha and the haunting night would linger in his mind, it would serve as a reminder of the dangers of delving too deep into realms that belong to the spirits and shadows. As Thomas emerged from the sacred grove, a profound sense of peace settled over him, dispelling the lingering shadows of fear and uncertainty. The forest around him seemed to exhale a sigh of relief, its ancient heart pulsing with a newfound tranquility. As he made his way back through the forest, guided by the gentle glow of dawn on the horizon, Thomas reflected on the journey that had led him here. He had ventured into the depths of darkness seeking answers, only to discover that true wisdom lay in humility and respect for the natural order. Days turned into weeks, and Thomas found solace in the simple rhythms of village life. The memory of Agatha and the haunting night gradually faded like mist under the morning sun, replaced by a deep-seated reverence for the mysteries that surrounded him. One evening, as Thomas sat by the fire with his friends, sharing tales of their childhood adventures, a stranger arrived in the village. She was a woman of striking presence, her eyes filled with an otherworldly wisdom that hinted at secrets older than time itself. The villagers whispered that she was a traveler from distant lands, a keeper of ancient lore and guardian of forgotten knowledge. Curiosity stirred within Thomas once more, but this time tempered by the lessons he had learned. Approaching the woman, Thomas greeted her with cautious respect. "Greetings, traveler," he said, his voice steady despite the lingering echoes of past encounters. "What brings you to our humble village?" The woman regarded him with a knowing smile, her gaze piercing yet gentle. "I have heard whispers on the wind of a young man who dared to confront the darkness and emerged with a heart tempered by wisdom," she replied, her voice a soothing melody that seemed to echo with the forest's secrets. Thomas felt a surge of pride mixed with humility at her words. "I sought answers," he admitted, "but found more than I bargained for." The woman nodded, her expression understanding. "The path of knowledge is fraught with peril and temptation," she murmured, "but it is also a journey of growth and discovery." In that moment, Thomas realized that his encounter with Agatha and the mysteries of the forest had transformed him. He had faced the darkness within and emerged stronger, with a deeper appreciation for the delicate balance between curiosity and respect. As the seasons turned and life in the village continued, Thomas became known not only for his bravery, but also for his wisdom and compassion. He shared the lessons he had learned with the younger generation, urging them to heed the tales of old and tread lightly in the presence of nature's mysteries. And so, dear listener, the story of Thomas and the haunted forest became a legend passed down through generations. It served as a reminder of the timeless wisdom that resides in the natural world and the profound journeys that await those who dare to seek the truth. As for Thomas, he never forgot the lessons he learned that night. He lived out his days in harmony with the forest, forever grateful for the peace he had found and the profound connection he had forged with the ancient spirits that watched over their shared domain. And as twilight fell over the village, casting long shadows that whispered of stories untold, Thomas would often wander to the edge of the forest. There, beneath the canopy of stars, He would offer a silent prayer of gratitude to the spirits who had guided him on his journey of discovery. For in the end, it was not the answers he had sought that defined him, but the wisdom and reverence he had gained along the way. And so, the tale of Thomas and the haunted forest echoed through time, a testament to the transformative power of courage, humility, and the enduring mysteries of the natural world.